Jeff, finally, take it away.
All right, guys. Thank you. Sorry for the delay there, but welcome to League One Fun, presented by Beautiful Game Network and sponsored by Roughneck Scarves. For those of you who are going to be listening on the podcast, we had a few technical difficulties we had to work through, so we're a little bit late on the live stream, but that's all right. We still have a great show today. Anyhow, we got some signings to talk about. We got some preseason games, and that's my most exciting area today because I was actually able to watch a League One game over the weekend, so I can give you an actual report instead of just giving you a score. As always, we got some spicy soccer takes, and we'll get to your questions. So let's kick right into it. Ira, I know that Richmond signed at least one player. If you would like to take away, talk about who got signed and why we should know them.
Yeah, so about Abubakar Keita, he was a homegrown from who's actually on loan for the season from the Columbus Crew. So really exciting to see these young players being in proper loans instead of just kind of sitting on the bench or playing in U19 academy games. So I think that's really exciting. And one of the things that we have to appreciate about him is, he's a defender as well. So Richmond really is taking, their back line and also their development goals into account here. So he played 17 matches for the University of Virginia last year in 2018, and they allowed only 12 goals. That was one of the least in all of the NCAA. He was all freshman for the ACC conference, and also Top Drawer Soccer, our friends over there, named him to their second team best freshman. So he was in the January camp. So the U.S. Soccer is doing these January national team camps with multiple age groups. So they have U20s, U19s, and a couple of other age groups together. And he was called up to that camp. And he's interesting too because he was very late to joining the Crew Academy. There's a lot of kids who join, 12, 13 years old to the academy. He didn't join until he was 16. And during that time, interestingly, just to show you how aggressive this kid is, in 43 matches, he picked up 4 reds and a whole lot of yellows as well. So, he likes going after the ball for sure. Hopefully as he gets older, he won't, kind of be that aggressive where he's going to get a lot of reds, but it's nice to see a kid like that get a chance. So he is a homegrown for the Crew. So the Crew, I think, is very high on him and hopes maybe one day to call him back. And since the Crew, doesn't have their own 2 team, I think that this is the kind of, great loan system that League One can be used for both the championship and MLS.
Yeah, and Phil Grooms and I were speaking about it. Phil Grooms brought it up that this is exactly what this league is perfect for. So you have these MLS teams and even USL championship teams that have players who don't get minutes, right? I brought up in the first episode how Minnesota United had a player who got literally 0 minutes within the whole year. So this is the kind of loans that you want to see. And when we see, I don't know if Raheem Edwards is actually going to play. Last I heard from Lansing, he's not with the team yet, so we're not sure. But this is the kind of loans that is going to make this a great league. And this loan specifically is great for Abubakar because now he gets playing time. And with the U20 World Cup coming, he was in the camp in January. If he wants to get a considerable look at, he needs to be playing. He needs to have some kind of highlights. He needs to have minutes. They need to be able to tell that he's in form and he's someone that they can bring with him. So this is a perfect loan for both Richmond, having someone that went to college there, and for Abubakar as well.
Speaking of players who had a contract with a MLS team, Jason, you want to talk about Forward Madison's new signing?
Yes, the dreams of Giro are here. So for those who weren't watching the Twitter feed during the preseason, Minnesota United had a player on trial, this mysterious player no one knew about, Jiro Toyama, who was just banging in goals, had a hat trick against FC Tucson, and everyone was just like, yes, sign him. We need him. Every time he was on the field, he was impressive. But the thing that's most impressive about Jiro is his ability to pretty much seems like to play anywhere, right? So we didn't know who this trialist was. He was being known as P. Flamingo for forward during these preseason games, but he was playing right wing. And so trying to find out who it was, I was looking at Minnesota's trialists since the affiliation, and I could not figure out who it was. And the reason why I couldn't is because Jiro was playing left wing with Minnesota United during his whole preseason. So the fact that he's able to go right wing now and be impressive for Forward Madison is something that all fans should be excited about. And they should even be more excited because prior to even the preseason with Minnesota United, he's been playing left back for the past 2 years. So that just shows the versatility of him, where he can be all over on the field. I went to Florida Gulf Coast where he played in the wing and back. Exciting players from Chiba. And this is someone that I think Ford and Minnesota fans can both get behind. So when you go to a couple Minnesota United games, you might see some Jiro jerseys around.
So in continuation with MLS a theme here for signings, Toronto has a player that I can talk about. Now, as we've talked about with OCB and Toronto too, we knew that there was a supposed roster available. We knew that there was at least some number of players, but we didn't have anyone really to talk about. But Toronto has signed Eric Klinovsky, who recently played with Hapoel Marorik FC, which is in Israel's second division. So to my calculations, that's the second player in League One that has came from an Israeli Premier League or the Israeli Soccer League in general. But what's interesting about Eric is that in 2017, he was drafted by DC United and was playing for USL League Two's Ocean City Nor'easters, and also played for New York Red Bull U23s. He did make one appearance with the Richmond Kickers, and in 2016 won the co-goalkeeper of the year. So he's definitely a young talent, has some hardware to bring to the team. I know, Ira, you had some thoughts or some observations of him.
Yeah, so I actually live very close to Rider University, and I actually saw him play once against Rider because they were in the same conference in New Jersey. He went to Monmouth University, and he's from Lincoln Park, New Jersey, which is a real place. It's not only a band. So he's a pretty strong shot stopper. Where I think he probably is a bit of deficiency is with his distribution. So he's not as good with his feet or goal kicks or just finding kind of the right player out of the back. But he's pretty tall, and he gets down really fast for a guy who's 6'6". He really gets down quite quick. So I think he's okay. I think he might be maybe like Toronto's thinking that he might be like a third string goalkeeper. They might play him in cup matches against maybe, Canadian Premier League teams or something like that. But he's, if he gets enough reps here and he gets a lot of experience in League One, he could be a guy who ultimately gets, at least a few reps with the first team.
For sure. Another signing that we have is for Lansing. It's actually a loan, but it's Alex Bruce, who's 20 years old. He's from England, played with the Texans SC Houston's U17 and 18. He had 17 goals in 29 games, so he can put the ball on the back of the net. He also played with San Antonio FC in last year. He had 3 goals, but something that caught my eye was that his pass completion rate in the 13 games that he played was just above 70%. So you think about 13 games, depending if I don't know if he started all of them, but they figure out the minutes they're having completion of over 70. That's pretty good for that limited amount of time. But it also shows that the players from the championship who aren't playing, should get some more playing time by coming down to League One. Chris, I haven't kicked anything off to you yet. How do you think that having loanees is going to affect the rosters for League One. We see that there's a couple loanies coming down, and there's possibly some more in the future with different partnerships from MLS clubs and League One. But moving forward, how do you think this affects the roster spots and teams that are trying to fill out rosters?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're a League One team, you welcome that, especially from the MLS level. I mean, you're talking to very high quality players who are maybe on the younger side or who just aren't getting the playing time, maybe need some development, but there's a lot of upside if you're a League One team. As a fan of a team that doesn't necessarily have any of those loanees announced yet, like that, it's something that I'm jealous of. Like I wish we could get some big name. Like I would love to see some of the recent signees, some of the super draft picks from this year come down and have a little spin with Greenville. The other side of that though is that a lot of times with loanees come expectations from the parent club, and they want a guaranteed certain amount of playing time or a certain position or a certain level of training. And so I know, it's dependent on the organization and what they're looking to do. Some coaches may not really welcome that or want to have that kind of oversight. They may want to be able to do their own thing. And perhaps that's what Greenville's doing. I think just in the few times I've met Coach Harkes, I think he has a very clear vision of what he wants to do. And so maybe he's a little more resistant to having someone come in that needs to have some kind of required playing time or required system to play in.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see which teams actually decide to do this. I think, Ira, in your piece, you said there's 30 roster spots, right? And I know Richmond's not even halfway there. You've got a couple teams who, are almost full. You've got a couple teams that aren't even close. So they might bring in guys late, right? Or maybe they keep those spots open with the freeze of the roster being so late into the season. Maybe that's when you go, okay, let's loan some guys in. We're in 5th. We need to get to that 4th place to get into the playoffs. Let's loan somebody in now, get a couple games before the freeze comes. And then by not having those 30 spots already full, you allow that opportunity to happen. So I have a feeling this is just one of, many loanees we're going to see in the league.
I think there's going to be a little bit of trickle down with that too, because, once the MLS season's going for a couple weeks, then, USL championship level's kicking off this week. So you might have some folks filter down there, and I think it's going to trickle down. We may, you may get some MLS guys fall all the way down to League One, but I think it could also trigger some championship side players trickling down to League One as some of these MLS guys get loaned to championship sides.
And I think the other thing is too, it depends on the coach. I think Chris is 100% right. Like someone like Richmond getting someone for the season is much different than someone going back and forth between League One. Like one of the problems Richmond had in the past was they would get guys from DC who wouldn't train with them, right? They would just be with DC and then they drive the hour and a half to Richmond, play in a game, not have any chemistry with the team. And that's not an ideal situation. I mean, I think quite frankly for the team as well as for the players, kind of their own development. So I think, loan like a season-long loan or even if it's known there's going to be a 6-month loan is much different than having this up and down that you might get with, say, some of the two sides, for example. So, but I agree. Like if Coach Harkes doesn't want to have to deal with, definitely playing a player in 50% of matches, if they're not performing well in practice and in training and stuff, then, I think that's completely in their right.
Now, Chris, I know that you're a little bit jealous that so far Greenville hasn't had any of the loanees, but Greenville did get their jersey reveal today.
They did. They did. And it was, I think Jason's our spicy soccer guy, but I think I might have dropped a little spicy on MLS today, talking about how you do white kits the right way. You don't just put out some plain white tees. Hey there, Delilah. We got to get some design going here. And the Triumph went hashtag full Fulham and went the bars across. And the cool thing I didn't notice at first was that the green in the middle is actually the gradient, like the crest. It kind of fades. It makes it look a little metallic. And then The home kit, the primary kit, I guess, is green with blue shoulders. There's some blue stripes down the side. I think they look amazing. Obviously with Nike, you know, they're going to be good kits, and obviously with Nike, the price tag is going to be a little bit hefty. But you know, the thing about it is, I don't think it's any more unreasonable than most USL Championship teams or League One teams have had. But you know, I'm willing to pay a little bit of a price if it's a kit that I actually want to wear, and that's the thing I'm most pleased with Greenville's is they're good looking kits, and like I'm kind of frustrated because I feel like now I've got to buy both of them because I really love both of them, and I am not a white kit guy, but this white kit is fresh.
Yeah, this is one of the I approve of this spicy message. This is one of the white kits that I have enjoyed. And I do love on the primary kits the white collar. I think it's the little things like that, little details like that that really stick out and turn a jersey into something special as opposed to looking like a regular shirt. And I think it incorporates all of the brand's themes, the team's colors. So yeah, I'm with it. I don't know how I feel about the $90. I'll talk about that another day, but let's see what the rest of the league does first, and then we can talk about it.
Well, so supporters in the official supporters group and season ticket holders get a little bit of a discount. So, you know, just saying, got a little bit of that. The other thing I'll say too, that I appreciate what the Triumph did is they have a very, very local business started in the upstate, has really grown to a massive company as their primary sponsor, a company that has business across the country. And they said in the announcement, hey, this is a great opportunity for us to be featured in all of these states and cities where we are trying to grow our business throughout the league. But I appreciate that they stayed local there. And I also appreciate that from the vice chairman of the team, he vetoed any kind of tramp stamp sponsor on the back panel. So he's like, we're keeping the back clean, just the number and the name. Don't need to have that little butt flap sponsor there. So
no strike butts like here in Atlanta.
It's great to see. You know, we were talking about the different partnerships and the different sponsors. Like Ignites was LAFC, which is their credit union in Lansing. But it's really great to see that not only is League One trying to be more community based on their teams and getting the support out there, but also their sponsors. I hope that continues as we see more kit reveals, and you know, as about every year, every 2 years, teams get new kits, and depending on the sponsorship contract, it could change, but hopefully it stays local for the most part there.
Our league's putting their money where their mouth is. You know, what's your league doing? Just throwing that out there, questioning it.
Spicy takes already.
Adidas.
So, Chris, you also have mentioned, I know it was at least in our chat, that from what you can tell, it looks like the Triumph has sold 1,000 season tickets.
Yeah, that's a rough estimate. So basically, the team announced that they're playing a scrimmage against App State at home on March 16th. So it's a Saturday. So they're trying to, one, just get some fans out, be able to test run the stadium, probably test run all the game day operations just to make sure everything's kind of running smooth before the first home game comes. And so as a part of that, season ticket holders are able to get their seat for free. And so they've kind of grayed out the seats, but they're also selling tickets to the match. So me being the enterprising journalist that I am, went on the site to try to see which seats were grayed out and which seats were still available for sale, and literally individually counted all of the seats that were grayed out, got to just north of 850 of the seated season tickets, so that have a specific seat. And then there are sections on both ends of the sideline that are general admission, and then the entire supporter section is general admission. So I'm assuming that there's probably at least 150 general admission tickets either in supporter section or on the ends. Add that to the 850. So I'm thinking that they've probably sold north of 1,000, which for a team that hasn't existed before in a brand new league, I think that's a real statement of how this community has really embraced the team already. And so I'm excited to see it grow, because I really think, I think with the kit reveal today, that's going to be big time news. People are going to see a tangible thing. I think that's going to draw some more interest, probably some more ticket sales. I think once they do the scrimmage and there's actually a product on the field, that'll drive some more sales. Once the first game comes around, that's going to drive a lot of sales. So I really think it's going to be a really banner year for the Triumph in their first season.
Yeah. This past weekend, when I was talking with Ignite's head coach, Nate Miller, he was explaining
throwing names out there at us.
We'll get to that later. But he was, explaining about how massive the community has gone together and collectively just are dying to have soccer, and they do have Michigan State, which is a great, college team, but to have this is their first professional soccer team in Michigan. And how they're just dying to have it. So, hopefully they get their numbers. I know their stadium situation is completely different than what the Triumph has, but hopefully we see these numbers not only for the first year, but also continue that way throughout the upcoming seasons. Speaking of upcoming seasons, though, there was a mention that there could be a League One team coming to Long Island, potentially. Maybe
imagine a professional soccer stadium in New York City area, and it doesn't involve NYCFC. Wow, couldn't be my league.
Ira or Jason, do you want to speak more on that?
Ira, you can speak on it.
Yeah, so I actually grew up out that way. So I actually grew up watching the Rough Riders. One of my coaches when I was growing up in the 80s played for one of the incarnations of them before the current one, which has been around now since 94. So the Rough Riders are talking about maybe joining League One, and they're looking for a stadium. And a couple of years ago, I want to say it was 2017, maybe 2 years ago, they were looking for space in a place called Ronkonkoma, which is like right dead center of Long Island. And there's a little airport there, so you can actually get regional planes from places like Charlotte or Greenville, and actually be able to fly there. So it would be an interesting place for soccer. It's a hotbed of soccer. It's like in a way, it's like New Jersey, and the Cosmos have a development academy out there. There's another development academy out on Long Island as well. I don't think it's run by the Rough Riders. Rough Riders have their own program, but it is a hotbed for soccer. I mean, it's where a lot of people. You think about who played for the Rough Riders back in the day, and it's guys like Giovanni Savarese and Tony Meola. I mean, those are household names in the soccer community, and they played for the Rough Riders. So that would be great for the franchise to have a pro team in the future. We were talking about this in our chat, though. We have a lot of teams on the East Coast now in League One. We need a lot more out West. I mean, Tucson is so far out of the way. Maybe this could lead us to a discussion. And I don't know, if Jeff or Chris, you guys have an idea, like what jurisdictions out West could help, Tucson and building the game up there. There's a big blank space on the map, kind of.
If there's any oil tycoons or businessmen out in Montana, cattle ranchers that want to fund a team, Montana FC, I'll move there tomorrow. I'm in for Montana FC. I think you look at the other leagues, and there really are a lot of teams kind of on the West Coast and the Southwest area and into Texas. But I think kind of that middle plains area in the country, the Utah, I mean, you have RSL, but like the Utahs, the Idahos, the Wyomings, Montanas, the Dakotas, like I feel like there's a big patch of America, and I get, that's probably where the least amount of people live. But I think there's a big blank space in the map there that could really be filled. And maybe League One, as they continue to grow as a league, maybe that's the strategy, is like, let's try to find markets where there is a need and there's not currently something there, and we can go in and try to fill that void. And I don't know, we'll see what happens.
And all that's going to do is help on a national scale too, because you look at Boise. Boise has an incredible player pool. They have a lot of talent up there. The fans have been asking for soccer for years now. I see it all the time on Reddit, Twitter, wherever soccer fans are complaining. So if you bring in, a soccer team in the Boise, now you're developing players closer to home. They don't have to have a financial constraint of moving all the way down to Arizona or California or wherever to go to those academies to get that training. And all of a sudden now maybe we'll find the left back that we need in the U.S. national team, right? Maybe we're able to find a left winger. We can find those players because now we're going into areas where we haven't been and we're able to find that talent.
They got to play on a blue pitch if they're in.
Oh,
Boise.
of course. Yeah, of course.
And Colorado has a whole conference in the UPSL that just caved. So there's a big gaping hole there too that League One could jump in and fill.
As Ryan was talking about, last week when we had him on the show, there are a couple teams. He did drop. I just blanked on both of the names there. Bowling Green was one, and I blanked on the other one. But they are talking with areas and teams that would like to be in there. Obviously, they're most likely not going to come this upcoming year. It's probably going to be 2 to 3 years out. But late last week with the USL Championship, the news dropped about some games that are going to be on ESPN3 and ESPN News, and there was some fans of championship teams that were complaining about their team not having the game time, things of that nature. But when I looked at the schedule, besides the fact that most of them had Saturday games, if you look at the teams that have the most ESPN3 or ESPN News viewings, they're in areas where either it's a brand new team or in areas where there's a lot of room for the surrounding viewing area to get a League One team. So, it sucks if your team doesn't have ESPN3, ESPN News. You'll get over it. But it's a lot more for USL as a whole to look at, where are these areas that, maybe we haven't discovered yet, but we want to tap into. And this is a great way because ESPN3, ESPN News are not on the ESPN Plus. So if you still have cable, if you have those channels, you can watch them there. But it's also, like El Paso has, I think it's 3 or 4. And we know that Texas is just a hotbed for soccer in and of itself. And you can easily put 3-4 League One teams there and not disrupt anything in the surrounding area. So I think that moving forward, the TV structures that we see, that are going to be more on the TV side than the ESPN Plus side, are going to be how they're looking at. All right, what's the fan base looking like? Where can we go and start making deals about, hey, we want a team here, or we see have interest, and that's the biggest part of this. It's we would love Western Coast teams, we would love middle of the country teams, but it's also seeing exactly where people want the teams and where they're going to be successful. You obviously don't want to put a team in a city where it's going to happen for a few years and then it's going to crumble. Those things do happen, but the more responsible you can be with planning cities and teams, the better.
And I like how Jeff threw his own fans under the bus there, telling them to quit whining, Riverhounds. But like I said a couple weeks ago, Des Moines, talent there. They've been craving soccer. You look at the Premier League statistics, MLS statistics, Norfolk is in the top 10 every week, right? And I don't know any soccer team up there. So those are places to look for. But one place we might see a League One team, the Lakeland Tropics had a proposed stadium deal, and they're trying to build a 3,500 seat stadium. And it'd be great to get an Orlando Tropics rivalry going on. So, that might want to look into that and see if that's something that we could potentially see in the future.
So speaking of the grassroots, speaking of local areas there, Tormenta had some of their players actually go see a Statesboro High School match, which is really cool. As we've talked about all throughout the show here, but also last week when Ryan touched on it, it was the fact that having kids, whether they're in elementary school or high school, having a stadium near them, having a place where they can look and say, maybe one day I'll play there. Obviously set your aspirations as high as they can go, but be like, maybe one day I'll play there. It'll be comforting. And having Tormenta players go to a high school, there are high school kids that can look and be like, okay, there's a new team that's coming here watching us. Maybe I can get an interest in one of those scouts there. Maybe I know that I'm not fully prepared, or maybe I don't have the talent or the path to go super high right now, but this is a pathway up through, and the team just being down the road. And I hope we see more of that as we go on. I know that there's preseason matches versus college, and then Lansing has the Capital Cup. But the more they can get involved in their community, the better it's going to be.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's cool that players can look over and see that the professionals are there. A, makes them probably try harder, right? Knowing that, hey, I'm being watched. B, it makes it a more realistic goal. And then C, it might be accessibility, right? They might actually be able to go to the players after the game and get tips, or the players might be able to tell them like, hey, what you do with your right foot is really great. Why don't you try working on this? And that's something that can really help the community grow, and also help these players, try to achieve something that, they might lack the motivation for, or might not see it possible, but now that they see players at their game, they think it's realistic.
So for those that watch our live streams, we all know that Jason is the kit master. I think on the first or second episode, he said that he could go probably from like the first of the year till early spring, every day with a different jersey on. It's absolutely fine. And we know that he likes his spicy soccer takes. But is it true you might have something here about a kit reveal, or a little thing here that you want to talk about?
Well, so me being a kit connoisseur, I have some sources going around, and I might have obtained a certain League One jersey that has not been released yet. And so, you know what? I think I'm gonna release it on our social media channels. What do you guys think? Friday sound good? I think we'll do Friday. So Friday, look at our Twitter channel. You're going to see an exclusive League One Fun jersey reveal. I'm not gonna. I'll throw a hint on there tomorrow as to which team, but it definitely is a fire jersey. And I'm not saying that just to say it. Like, me being the kit connoisseur, I'm gonna let you know straight off the back, it is fire. I love every part of it, and I think you guys are gonna like it too on Friday.
So two things about this. One, I fully expected him to do what every highly college recruit has, is where they just rip off whatever shirt or hoodie they have on and just show it. One, I was fully expecting that. And two, if the team, whoever the team is, gave you this opportunity and you didn't like the jersey, would you straight up tell them no?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. If your jersey's trash, I'm not going to wear it. Everyone has their price, right? But I'm not, I wouldn't be doing all this, right? I'd be like, oh, look whose jersey it is. Isn't that cute? But no, this is a absolutely great jersey. Like I was saying, incorporates their theme very well. The colors, the branding, even the goalkeeper jersey's cool. So look out for that on Friday.
All right, we're just dropping hot takes all over the place here. So there was some preseason games. This is the second full week of preseason. I guess technically this is almost the third. I'll go about the games that we have scores on. There are a couple of games that I don't know the scores of, so we'll talk to those after I'm done, just in case I missed anything. But as we talked about last week, the USL Championship and USL League One preseason, a little bit of a rivalry. Ford Madison beat St. Louis FC 1-0. Then it kind of fell off the rails because North Texas played a non-championship team, and Pepe scored 2 goals, I believe.
4 on the preseason. He's got the preseason Golden Boot right now. And just to correct you, because I don't need your mentions being full of angry St. Louis fans. I think St. Louis won that 1-1-0.
Did they?
I think so.
No. Ooh,
Are you
see,
sure?
I don't know. I think I got the. Let me check League One
Yeah,
site here to make sure that
I think you're
I
too
can set
busy
up.
at Lansing and
I
canoodling with
am too
them,
busy
so I
here.
don't think you actually got to watch
Yes,
it.
yes, I wrote it down absolutely wrong. I wrote it down. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to me. This has been an off week, so don't listen to me. St. Louis did win. Then the Riverhounds beat Lansing Ignite. Speaking of Ignite, 2-0. We'll talk about that game in a minute. The Kickers drew with Old Dominion 2-2. And game today with Ford Madison and St. Louis University. But when my last check, I did not see a score for that.
I think it was canceled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I know they were against some bad weather, so that makes sense.
Yep. And then I think with the Kickers game, that 2-2 with Old Dominion, I don't think the Kickers played all of their starters. I think that was a pretty much a trialist game and had a lot of the trialists playing in that one.
Okay.
Yeah, they substituted almost everyone from what it looked like. So like a lot of people got to run out.
Well, that's one of the things that we like seeing. Is obviously, the trialists who are trying to make the team getting as much time as possible. I know Jason got into it a little bit this week in his mentions about preseason, but in all honesty, the score for preseason, like, you shouldn't take those scores too seriously. Like, you should take trends seriously, but not the scores, especially League One fans, because this is your second, third games in. You're still about 3 weeks away before the season starts. So there's still a lot of trialists trying to make the team. There are coaches that are trying to figure out, who's staying week to week, who, isn't making their camp the next week to bring in players. So there's a lot of that going on. But in the Ignite game, as we say about the score lines, doesn't necessarily talk about the game. So Ignite did play the Riverhounds pretty hard. And for those of you who don't know much about the Riverhounds, I don't blame you because before this year we weren't that successful. I mean, I'm gonna be honest here.
The fans now, the team. Good Lord!
Wow, we've converted it. Jason and Chris, we have converted Jeff into League One.
Jeff's getting his media passes revoked. I don't.
No, I mean, honestly, if you pay attention to the Riverhounds before this past season, for the last 3 or 4 years before this past season, we weren't really that great. So like a lot of people just like beat over this. But with Bob Lilly, we've been a more defensive team. Not that we haven't scored, but that's been our bread and butter. Is you can't beat us if you can't score. And Lansing knows this. And Lansing was a very attacking. So they did play the Riverhounds very hard. The first goal that got scored was a bad rebound that just didn't get picked up and got put in the back of the net. So, it wasn't, them being overpowered. It was just one of those fluke things that happens. And that was just before the end of the half. So when they came out for the second half, they were still playing hard, but you could tell the confidence was shaken a little bit. And as time went on, Hounds who are playing not this week but next week's their opening game, so they have most of their players are already signed. Most of their players there, in the second half were players that they were either looking to get some time in. I know Joe Greenspan was coming back from an injury, so he got some limited time, but they did score a goal because they just outlasted Ignite. And for a team that's, almost ready to start a season compared to a team that's just starting preseason, it wasn't that bad of a game. Obviously there's some things to work on, but it was just one of those examples where the score doesn't tell the full story. And with that, I did get to talk to Nate Miller after the game for a interview that will get posted, sometime relatively soon. But he was saying that that game was obviously disappointing, but there was a lot of goods to be taken out of it, and it's a lot of players trying to get into their system. One of the players that I got was really impressed with, and not because Jason told me to give him a review of it, but Nick Moon is going to be an amazing player. So he played on the left. He started out like what looked like a wide left wing, and then turned out, on defense he'd go back to be more of a wing back, but he would just run deep streaks anytime they got the ball for a counter, and it worked for about the first 5 or 6 attacks. Like Bob Lilly was having fits with his defense because they weren't picking it up. But he kept that up pretty much the whole game. He had a couple nice runs, but just his work rate, it's going to be amazing. That's one player you should definitely watch. So congrats, Jason, for knowing exactly who to tell people to watch. So we have a few questions. I know that we started a little bit later today, but we have a few questions. Also, for those of you who are trying to watch the Atlanta CCL game, I'm sorry that we're keeping you a little bit past the deadline. We understand if you jump off.
That would be me.
So we won't hurry up with the questions, but we'll get to as many as possible here. Andrew Utaro comes with a question of, speaking of the new teams, how does Buffalo not have any kind of pro soccer team? And that's a very good question, especially for New York, especially for the Buffalo region. I'll kick it off to you because you live closer to there than I do.
Yeah, it is a little baffling, right? I think Rochester was kind of always the Western New York team. And, between Syracuse and Rochester and Buffalo, Rochester was kind of nestled there in between, but it's still a long way, right? So I think, League One, that would be great if there was a team in Buffalo, or even Niagara, somewhere kind of along the Erie Shore there, because you'd easily be able to get to Toronto, easily be able to get to Rochester. It's not that far really to Lansing or to or even down the road to Harrisburg when those teams come on. So I think that's a really interesting metropolitan area, and certainly one that I would be really surprised if USL hasn't been considering. I think maybe there's some other priorities because there's other holes within media markets, but it certainly makes a lot of sense. It's a pretty decent soccer area. There's always high school state champions from that neck of the woods, or people who make the finals all the time from there. So it makes a lot of sense if there were I think one of the issues with a lot of the cities is probably finding relevant ownership groups more than anything else. If you have a good ownership group, I'm sure the league would consider it if you were able to get plans for stadium and stuff. And that's where Rochester is. That's the problem that Rochester's having, is where to play. It's not that they don't want to. That's one of the oldest, teams in USL. So, clearly we want them back. So can Buffalo find a stadium as well?
Anyone else before we move on? All righty. So Ethan Fable wants our way too early predictions for a top 5 team in the league. Now, I will start off with his. Chris, you might want to cover your ears for this one. I'm sorry. But his are, and I don't think they're in a particular order, but Madison.
No, he actually did put them in an order, but I forgot to put the numbers. So this is the order that he put them.
Okay, so we go Madison, Chattanooga, Lansing, Richmond, North Texas. And for sake of time, we won't go around the room yet and ask the top 5. But how close is he to your top 5?
Not even.
Nowhere in
Wow.
the near vicinity.
Well, as the only neutral on this show, I think he's got 4 out of 5. I'm not going to say which 4.
No, okay. I'm going to actually make you say which 4, because tell me which one you're replacing.
Okay. Madison, for sure. Lansing, for sure. I think they're going to have the deepest depth and rotation because of their playing style. I do think that there's no way Greenville isn't going to be in that top 5. I think they're going to slip in S5 just because of their coach, just because of what they're doing. So Richmond, I believe, is going to be there too. I don't know about North Texas. I think that they're going to be a very talented team. I don't know if it's going to be enough to be in that top 5 though, because they're kids, right? Like from as talented as kids are, they're still kids. They still need that experience. They still are going to get tired legs. This is probably the most that they've played in their lives, and the amount of games they're going to play, the amount of minutes they're going to play. So I think North Texas is going to be one of the most fun teams to watch, but I think towards the end of the season, they might trickle out of it. But my concern with Chattanooga is I don't know about that back line. And I don't know about that age, So when you have teams like Lansing and you do have younger teams like Orlando in North Texas that's going to be running around rapidly, I don't know how long Chattanooga is going to be able to hang with that back line. But we'll see what kind of reinforcements they bring in. It's still early.
He's going to try to backtrack this one, but you heard this from Jason. He doesn't like kids. If you have kids on your team, he just doesn't like you.
Yeah, they're expensive, waste of investments. You don't know how they're going to turn out. Nah. Play the lottery, you got better chances.
So Weston Sheldon, who always chirps in with very good questions, his question is: if you were a League One coach and you had the Open Cup game wedged between 2 league games in a week, would you prioritize who you throw out there for the cup game, or would it be dependent on where you are in the standings?
I might go first on this one, just really quick. I think that you have to prioritize the cup games because the U.S. Open Cup comes so relatively early in the season, and where you can maybe make up some points on the back end if you want to go through. But it's a big deal, right? To be able to go and be the number 1 team from League One, there is a little bit of a monetary gain that you get for being the best team from the league. But importantly, like you want to prove yourself against the championship team, and you don't want to be embarrassed if you wind up playing a League 2 team in that in say the first round when you enter. So it's one thing to maybe you throw out a kind of a mixed team if you're going up against a championship team that you don't think you can beat even with your first team, but it's different to it depends on where you are, I think, in the cup cycle, not so much in the league cycle.
Yeah, 100% agree. This is why depth's important, right? Like this is what it's for. It's about staying on top of the table, but also being able to have these, in middle of the week games and be able to bring someone off your bench that you're confident that can keep up with people from USL Championship or a level that's higher than the league. So yeah, depth's important, but I also think it depends on the team, right? So I think for these Toronto, Texas, Orlando's, that's experience, right? So it's just like, that's great for them to get out, but that might not be a priority. For Chattanooga,
they're not
won't be playing.
There's actually 6.
That's right, they won't.
There's only 6 teams that are in it. So the 4 second teams aren't in it.
Okay, so then but it's still like Chattanooga needs to, in my opinion, do the best out of all League One teams for them to make that impression, for them to say like, hey, we're here. This is ours. Chris, I know Chris is going to try to instigate to make it spicy, but it's important for them because I truly believe their first year really dictates how long they're going to be in the league and how much fandom gets behind them. And so if they're able to go and showcase and say, look at us beating USL Championship teams, look at us playing MLS teams, there's another team in this town that's not doing that might swing, some in-between fans.
They've already made it further than Chattanooga FC in this year's.
There it is. There it is.
So my input on this is, and I'm going to steal a line from Nate Miller, is we don't come out to lose. So, yeah, I mean, it obviously depends on the standings. But at the same point, 1, this is the inaugural time for League One being the Open Cup. 2, you can make up points. Like realistically, depending on where you are in the standings, you can make up that's a total of 6 points there. If we win,
and what you could do is you could bunker with your second team, right?
Right, and like you have to be confident enough with your depth. Like if you're not confident enough with your depth, you're not doing a great job of putting your team together. Obviously their depth, so they're not your first team, but you shouldn't be building your rotation players or your depth players just for the sake of having to put together a roster. So you have to have some faith in them. And it also depends on who they draw, because there's going to be stronger and weaker teams, and like you may match up to that. So you may have, your full first squad in just because you're facing a stronger team in the cup.
So something they consider here too is, look, the first round when League One teams enter the tournament is May 7th and 8th. And when you think about that, we're only going to be 5 games into the season. So, no one's going to know where they really are in the standings, right? Like you might have an undefeated team and you might have another team that, has only won 2 matches, but they're only going to be, 9 points out of first place. So it's not, it's not that telling and that big of a deal. I think that first round is, in particular, you have to play your first team. As you get maybe a little deeper in the tournament, you might have to rethink that. But yeah, you go to win at least those first couple of games.
Staying on that motivation realm, Tyler Bartels asked, how do you stay motivated on a League One side when you're beating championship teams in preseason, where there's no current way to move up to the next division and a higher level of competition? Do you just hope, this is as a player, do you just hope you get noticed and force a bigger club to sign you in the upcoming seasons?
Well, yeah, I mean, you've got affiliate teams in MLS, right? So it's not like you're not being watched. You have different scouts looking. You're on ESPN Plus. This is your way of making the team so then that you can be in the position to showcase your skills to a wide variety of people, right? So that should be motivation enough. You should be going out there trying to solidify a starting spot and knowing that there can be anybody who might not be in the stands, but anyone can be watching you right now. And it's the teams that don't have affiliate teams, when they do get them, they're going to be looking down and say, okay, we've been watching and we think these two immediately are someone that we would want to come up to camp and see if they can do something for our team.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we joke about the League One versus the championship numbers in preseason, but I mean, I think in reality, we all know like a lot of these championship sides, they might be playing reserves, they might be playing trialists. Same thing with the League One teams. I get it. There's a contingent of people in America that really want pro rel. There's some people that don't want it at all. There's some people that are maybe somewhere in the middle. Probably a lot of people somewhere in the middle. And then the thing that you have to remember is that these things are really like the fraction of the smallest percentage of people who live in this country and are even soccer fans in this country. We're the fringe that are even thinking about pro rel and these things to this depth. The reality is, whether you want it or not, it's not here yet, and it's not coming tomorrow. This is something that I think we can look at the way the USL is structuring these 3 leagues and say, hey, maybe this is something down the road. They're thinking maybe they can slowly start to adapt and see what it looks like. But until it's here, I mean, I don't think as a player you're thinking much about it at all. You're just thinking, this is the team. I'm here. I'm an athlete. I'm a competitor. I'm here to win. I'm here to further my career, to advance my career as a player and try to play at the highest level possible. And so honestly, I don't think they care 2 licks about, well, our team can't get promoted if we win. Like, I don't think they care.
So guys, Steven Hernandez, he kind of jumped the gun on what I was going to talk about actually to close this one, is the fact that in a couple weeks, the podcast before the season starts is going to be a little bit different. Obviously, we'll cover some news and some questions, but it's going to be less factual. It's going to be more of, we're just going to give outrageous outtakes of what we think the season's going to be, because I feel like if we don't do that, we're not a true league podcast. But the question is here for the first 7 games, and these answers will not, you don't have to hold these for when we have our actual questions here, but for the first 7 games, who is the team that is most likely to go undefeated, the most likely to not have a win in 7 games, and who's most likely to give Madison a run for their money with social media? Jason, you have the hot take, so we're gonna go with you.
Okay, so most likely go undefeated. Got 2. I've got Tormenta, and I've been saying that from the get-go just because of the chemistry. They've all played with each other before. There's so many players that have come up from the League 2. So I think that they're ready to just come out the gates, and they've been really low-key about it. So I like their chances. And I like Chattanooga because they got those guys in early. They've been in training camp forever. I think they were the first people to start training camp in League 1, or one of the first teams to start training camp in League 1. So they're ready, and they've got experienced international players. They've just been working on that chemistry. So I think they're going to come out the gates, and they're going to be scoring. Going winless, I'm just going to say Toronto just because I don't know if Toronto even has a full team that can put out yet. I don't know what's going on with Toronto.
Goalkeeper, though.
They do.
Goalkeeper.
Right. So he's going to save maybe 8 and then allow 12. I don't know. But I don't know what's going on with Toronto. So just based off of that, I at least have seen Orlando's roster and recognize a couple names and can see that they have talent. I don't know what's going on with Toronto. And for Madison, with the social media, you could go on social media right now and see Madison tried to say, hey, Tucson, remember this guy? Giro, he scored a hat trick against y'all and was scoring all over y'all and busting y'all. So what do you think of that? And Tucson had a nice little spicy response saying like, oh, well, we don't really remember that because the guys that we played against him aren't even on our team. So they're kind of saying like, oh, that's cute that your trialists that you think are good enough for signing, they're not even good enough to sign for our team. So Tucson, I think, they do a lot of good videos, and now that they're getting a little spicy, they might come in the dark horse with the social media.
Chris, give us your suggestions.
Yeah, I think most likely to go winless is, I probably am going to say Toronto too. I also wouldn't be shocked if Orlando's in that mix. I think those 2 teams to me are the 2 that seem to, it's the living embodiment of the GIF with the stick figure poking the stick saying do something. So either one of those teams I could see going winless. I'm trying not to be a super homer about this, but really when I look at the schedule, when I look at Greenville's schedule, their first 4 games, they open the league season right down the road at Tormenta,
where they get their first loss.
And then they have 3 back-to-back home games. So I think they have the best chance to be undefeated after 4. And if that's the case, after that, they've got to go up to Madison, back home to North Texas, and up to Lansing. So that's a little more back and forth. But I do think having your first 4 games either at home or right down the road gives them a little bit of an advantage of just having that continuity, not having to bounce all across the country. I can tell you who's not doing it. Tucson's not doing it because they're just going to be there. It's too much travel. I don't think that they have the capability to do that and bounce all around the country. In terms of social media, hey, look, I might happen to know a guy who runs the social media up in Lansing, and I'm just giving him tips. I'm going to train him on how to be some spicy social, give him some of my GIF skills. And I think Lansing, I think my guy up there is, I think he's got potential to take on Madison, especially. And honestly, I'd love to see it because I think the Lansing-Madison rivalry has potential to be really great. And so I think if he can really go shot for shot with the Madison folks, it's only going to do good things for the league.
Ira,
I was going to pass it back to you, Jeff. What do you think?
So undefeated, I think Chattanooga should. And I don't know. I'm torn between Greenville and Tormenta, to be honest with you. But if I had to take one team, like just one team with the best shots, it's going to be Chattanooga. To go winless, yeah, I think it's going to be a clean sweep that we think it's going to be Toronto. And I on the social media, I don't know, to be honest with you.
We know you don't think it's the Riverhounds.
No. You know what? I will. I'm going to side with Chris, and it's not because Lansing's my team. I'm going to side with them just because it's that natural rivalry, and I feel like if you're not on par on the social media level with your rival, and we've seen them trade barbs already, so like they have to keep up with them at least this year. Do I think they're going to challenge them and beat them? Probably not, but I think it's going to be a nice, fun season-long battle to keep an eye on.
So I'm glad Steven asked the question this way, because I actually think that the chances of, after 7 games, after 7 matches, not having, I think everyone will have a win and everyone will probably have a loss in the first 7. But I don't think Chattanooga can do it, Jeff. I think their back line is really, kind of weak. So yeah, I think I might have to go with Greenville as well. I mean, it's also strength of schedule. Like, how many of the two teams that they play also. I think they play 2 of them in the first 7, where some of the other games they don't. As a second place dark horse of that, I might go with Lansing as well. I think that they're secretly putting together a pretty interesting team. The problem is, I think with all of these teams, is that we don't know how a lot of the trialists are going to work out, that people are that teams are signing. So until we see a game or two, like I wish we'd asked this question after, the next 7 games after the first 2, because then we'll have a better idea. Winless, I think we have to be unanimous that it's probably Toronto, just because we don't know who they are. I'm a Gen Xer, so I'm going to stay away from social media as much as possible.
Wow. Shots at millennials, shots at Riverhounds. What an interesting show today.
Okay, 2 things before we get out of here.
Old ass.
2 things. One, speaking of trialist, I found out at the game over the weekend that former Riverhounds goalkeeper Mike Kirk, who was our 3rd string goalkeeper that turned 2nd after an injury, is on trial. I haven't confirmed if he's a signee, but from what I've understand from the Lansing people is that they keep the trialist very, very under lock and key
until now.
But Mike Kirk is at least a trialist for Lansing. He got a few minutes of playing time, and there is potential that one of the trialists from the Riverhounds that got dropped this past week, so 2 weeks ago, we couldn't confirm or deny, but it seemed like he was also playing for Lansing. Which, if that's the case, I know they need some good depth for defense, so that's also welcome. So there's that. And then the second thing, because we've had spicy soccer, by me saying that I didn't care, or you probably shouldn't have paid attention to the Riverhounds.
Here we go, backpedaling.
No backpedaling. I stand by that. But I also stand by the fact that if you're from an area where your team is struggling, so this is great for League One because it's just starting out. So if you are from an area like where the team is going to be in a rough patch, because all these teams are going to have rough
Toronto,
patch.
Orlando.
I'm going to go with Orlando because I honestly don't know if Toronto has that many fans. I know that Orlando's MLS team has some fans.
Wow!
I'm being serious. I don't know. I don't know if Toronto has, like, if you've watched any of the championship teams, the last couple of years, there's not that many people that show up to Toronto games. So, like, I honestly don't know how many fans Toronto 2 has. But, if you are in a situation where your team struggles for a while, even if they're good and then struggles for a while, don't be fair weather. Don't quit on them just because they're bad. Please, that's not how you do fandom, because the second they're good, you're going to be back on it. We've seen it with all the other sports, and yes, there's some good things that come out of bandwagoning and fair weather fans, but please don't do this thing where my team is bad, I'm going to just sneak into the bushes, and then as soon as they're good, I'm going to Homer Simpson and come back out of them. Please don't do that.
So he did call out the fans again. Wow.
Oh, you guys. Okay, before we get out of here, is there anything else that you guys want to bring up? I know that there's the Atlanta game on. Did Monterey get that penalty, by the way? Or is it still a draw?
They scored.
No one knows? Wow. Okay.
Let's wrap it up.
All right,
Please.
I'm leaving everyone out here because they want to go. So thanks to our sponsor, Roughneck Scarves, official scarf supplier of the MLS, the ULS, and US Soccer. Get your custom scarves for your group or team at roughneckscarves.com. Thank you, guys. I know that you dealt with a little bit of a technical delay. Thank you for sticking on to us. Go watch Atlanta. I know two of you are just going to drop off now and go, but have a good week. Watch for that jersey reveal on Friday. Make sure you follow us at League One Fun. Make sure you listen to the podcast, subscribe, share with all your friends, plug it like crazy. And we'll see you next week.
All you dozen of Toronto fans, get in his mentions. Get in Jeff's mentions. Show that you're out there. Show you care about your team.
His DMs are open.